This is a way of sort of bridging the gap here. I have been termed the master of ceremonies here, which means I get to get up occasionally and introduce the next panel. So at this point, we do have a moderator who's going to introduce the speaker. I'm looking around for Mr. Lynn Featherstone. Oh, he's right over there. Well, excellent. He's anticipating his opportunity. So with that, I'll turn it over to, and he represents, by the way, the Haw River Assembly on our board. He's been real active with both groups for many years.
Okay, it's my pleasure today to welcome you to the afternoon session to the 45th. I'd like to welcome you all to the afternoon sessions of the 45th annual meeting of the Cape Fear River Assembly. My two predecessors at the mic, I think, gave you a very glowing description of what we try to do here in the Cape Fear River Assembly. Our motto is one river, many voices. When we get people here to serve on this board, we like to bring them into the uniqueness we feel we have here at the Cape Fear River Assembly, and that is this. We want people at the table, whether they're on our board or in these meetings that we try to conduct, to have different opinions. We know that everybody, if they keep talking to the same people with the same opinion, are going to get set in their ways, and we'll see some of the polarization divisions we're seeing in our society right now. Our goal is different. We want the people to come here and sit down with other people of different persuasions about water issues and the economic developments of our Great Basin. And we want these people to give us their best ideas, honest discussions with the people that might be there in the meeting place with them, so that we can move forward, maybe not agreeing on everything, but on issues crucial to each and every one of us. That's the uniqueness of, we're probably the only organization in the state that tries to pursue that one goal, is get the people at the table of different views and see if we can't get us some ideas and solutions started. It's my pleasure today to introduce to you Ms. Linda Culpepper. She is the Director of Water Resources for the state of North Carolina. Is going to bring an overview perspective to you about what is the thinking at their particular division at this point in time. We'll have a little answer session after she speaks with you. She's uniquely qualified for this job. She spent many years in the waste management side of environmental quality, and then she's worked over in the Water Resources branch, which she now heads. And so she's going to give us her information. She has a BS in chemistry from St. Andrews. That's Laurenburg, not Scotland. But we also, she came to another institution of higher learning called UNC. There's people in the room who will dispute that with me, I'm sure. And there she got her degree in environmental engineering. And now I give you Linda Culpepper. Linda, come on up.
Let me see how I can do this. Multitask. I know Frank's watching too, just see what he can do next. Well, thank you so much for inviting me to join you all today and participate. You have got a wonderful organization here, just a multitude of talents and experience and abilities that you've expressed today through the venue that you've had. Is just tremendous. I don't know that I've seen another opportunity to bring this many people together on the topic area, and just really thankful and fortunate that you've allowed us to join you as well. Appreciate that. And I recognize Jim Gregson's here too from the division. He's our we're both interim. I'm interim director, and he's interim deputy director, and he comes from the Wilmington regional office, so he's got a lot of local experience. We have some other folks here from our staff as well. I take these opportunities to learn from you probably more than you're going to ever learn from me. So if I'm going through something, stop, let me slow down and ask a question. I'd much rather do that than get to the end of the presentation and we can go through. I'm going to try this. So we've been doing overviews of the emerging compounds across the state, and we're going to take a focus, and it's a limited focus of media by media. I'm going to start with water resources, work into waste management is dealing with remediation and groundwater at the Chemours facility, and then into air quality, just to supplement things that you've already heard today. A lot of this information I'm going to go through that you've already seen. These presentations are going to be available to you as well, so that you'll have access to it later on if you want to look at it in some more detail. So what we're doing with the Chemours facility right now, we were doing sampling on a daily basis throughout the work week at the Chemours outfall. This is where their wastewater enters into the Cape Fear River. And right now, the staff is much smarter than me. They set up a composite sampler where it gets a little bit of the effluent, puts it into a contained area throughout the day. So it's a 24/7 type of sample. So then when they go in, and now they're sampling on Mondays, Thursdays, they're getting a sample of this composited material. So we get a look at the facility wastewater throughout the whole workday and through the weekend, instead of going there on Monday through Friday, taking a sample during the operations. And that's been important to us to understand the whole facility operations rather than just discrete samples during the week. See, we're also taking drinking water samples, finished water at those the drinking water utilities, and we really appreciate their cooperation. They're doing a lot of sampling themselves and analysis. This is just what we're doing to help supplement that data. We've started ambient monitoring across the state. We have ambient monitoring in the river basins. It's a 5-year cycle. So right now we're have targeted Jordan Lake because of some of the research that was being done from Duke University. They had done research with Robeson County and some samples in Jordan Lake and look at Cary's water supply. And we said, let's go back out and try to validate, see what's going on in that in the lake. So that started January 2nd. Our folks were out there. The water, some of the areas were iced. If you remember, that was a very cold period of time. They had to go back into some of the areas. So when you see data sets you may see for that January 2nd data set, it wasn't complete. That was because of the ice. I'm telling them they're crazy to be out there. From a safety standpoint, I get worried, but they want to do this. They're enthusiastic, and they're all in, and they made a great effort. That effort's going to go on through the end of June. It's a 6-month period to look at the water in Jordan Lake. We're also sampling the reservoirs along Cape Fear River, and that's May through October. We also are kicking off looking at waters in the Watauga and the New River. Those areas are under our ambient monitoring this cycle for this year. While we're out there doing nutrient and other analysis, we're going to be taking a sample. And right now, our analysis for the fluorinated compounds is coming from the EPA Athens, Georgia lab. We were heavily supported this last summer as Dr. Knappe has worked with the EPA Research and Development Lab at RTP with Dr. Mark Strainar. They were doing our analysis for us when we first started back in June. And their research facility, they've had to transition. They are continuing to do research. They had to let loose of us and put us onto their regulatory lab, which is down in Athens, Georgia. So that's why we've made a transition to that lab for the water analysis. Okay. Just to give you an idea of some of the indications that we have from our data, this is Pender County, and it's not starting exactly at the beginning, but you can see we've had results. And when you can look at this and probably a little bit more clearly from the slides online, there's a reporting level issue in some of this. When you have an open circle, that means that particular analyte was below the reporting level. So we can't tell you what the concentration was. We can just say that it was below a certain point. And you'll see there's a spot there towards the end, that red with 2 circles. That is indicating at the Athens lab, they had a difficulty with the reporting value for 2 different sampling events. I believe it went up to about 120 or 140 for that sampling event. So they had something that happened in the lab, the reporting level changed. So it went from where they had a reporting level of say 40, it went up. So that you're seeing an indication here. It doesn't mean the concentration went up, it's just that the reporting level went up and the value was still below the reporting level. So that can get confusing to folks, but we want to make sure we get the data information out there. Our spreadsheets are out on our website as well as these graphs so that you can take a look at it, but just I wanted to let you have that kind of insight that sometimes the reporting levels have been an issue. That's another reason why we're trying to get laboratory analysis capability within the state water quality lab so that we can work through these issues ourselves and try to take control when the reporting values or levels have been a little higher than what we are getting out of the private lab sector and what the universities have been able to do. The other thing is that EPA right now is on a 5-week turnaround, so we don't get results back for 5 weeks. And we're indicating that's not something that we want to continue. We want to be able to have faster return on the results. And this is at the Brunswick facility too. And you see that one peak there on the Gen X value. That was associated with the release that we spotted because of this monitoring that we've been able to do. We have been able to negotiate with Chemours. I know Dr. Cahoon earlier was talking about enforcement. It's because of this monitoring data, and there was a incident that had a spike. We've been able to negotiate with Chemours to containerize that wastewater and no longer release it through the outfall. I understand there's a lot of conversations on how long it took and a lot of different facets to that conversation, absolutely. But it's because of this monitoring, we're able to negotiate with them. And when we're talking to other states, they're asking us, how did you get them to do this here in North Carolina? So it's because of all that you're doing, all that the researchers are doing, all of us working together is why we're able to get these values down to where they are. And just know that we appreciate it takes a community to address an issue like this. No one entity is just echoing, no one entity is going to be able to solve all these problems, but us working together is going to be a better solution than any of us individually. Upcoming resources, as I said, we're trying to look across the state. This is just not a one chemical, one river basin issue. These emerging compounds is a variety. Dr. Ferguson, Duke University, he's interested in the non-fluorinated compounds that are out there. We're working with him, trying to collaborate with him as well. So we realize this is across the state. It's not just PFAS that we're interested in. Our struggles too, as I indicated with our support right now, we very much appreciate all that EPA has done. And I tell you, the Region 4 staff from Atlanta, before we even need something, they're asking us, what about this? You know, do you need this type of help? They've been extremely supportive. The Athens lab is also supporting 6 other states in this region. And the PFOA issue with firefighting foam, I'm not sure that that's been brought up yet today, but that can be a contributor, and it is in other states. They're having to do work for other states across the area. So we're trying to do, let's call it air traffic control. Our ambient monitoring is having to be fitted into their schedule for analysis because they have that much going on. They have added a mass spec just to look at those Nafion byproducts, the POF, MOAA, POF. Okay, all right. Thank you, thank you. I'm a chemist by education, but I'm dangerous in the lab. I'm worse with technology, but anyway, I appreciate that. They have added, I'm not gonna say a new one, they have added a mass spec just to do that type of analysis for us. And we haven't gotten those results back. They are still learning. They were doing a technology transfer from the EPA research lab folks who were very well learned in this. They're doing that transfer of knowledge to the Athens lab. So they're still in that preparation. But hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we will have those analysis. We were going to overload them if we said, go back to every single sample and do the analysis for all those Nafion byproducts and the other constituents that they have, internal lab standards. So we chose some discrete dates for them to do the analysis. Back in October, before they stopped all of the wastewater discharge, right before, right after December, and then when we were seeing some spikes as well, either due to rain events where there's contaminants in the soil, they're getting into the runoff, or other reasons. From now, they're doing remediation, and they're indicating they're having some spikes coming from the remediation efforts. But anyways, we're anxious to get that analysis. The ambient monitoring, as I said, we're having to coordinate, and we're looking at bioaccumulation factors. When we can do a groundwater standard based on that reference dose that Dr. DeWitt talked about, that's extremely important to us. Once we get the reference dose, there's a formula in the groundwater rules which will set up a value for what's allowed in the groundwater. Right now, though, some of you may like it better where we are right now. If there's no standard, then the regulatory threshold is the practical quantitation limit. So folks talk about these chemicals are not regulated, and we have to be a little bit careful because in the world of groundwater standards, they are regulated, and it's regulated to keep you out the practical quantitation limit. And that's why our division of waste management and our division jointly did an enforcement because they had a lot of chemicals that were above those practical quantitation limits. But we need the bioaccumulation to do a surface water standard. It looks in the environment, and there's a bioaccumulation number that we need. So we're trying to get fish tissue studies to look at the bioaccumulation as well in the aquatic toxicology. Our toxicology review is going to the Science Advisory Board that was newly refurbished to handle some of these toxicology questions where there's competing research out there. Dr. DeWitt, I know you look at a lot of different variety. You've got to choose which are the right endpoints, which studies to look at when you're setting regulatory levels. So we appreciate participation. Dr. Knappy's on that, as well as some folks from EPA and other universities. We appreciate their time and talent to help advise us on those levels. And waste management here, I think you've already seen this slide from Dr. Knappy, looking at the groundwater contamination across the community. And you can see the variety of results that we have. The health goal, again, for the drinking water is 140. And so when we're looking at the private wells, we're pivoting off of that value. And here, as you've already heard too, 837 of the wells have tested. 207 were above the health goal. The maximum they've seen so far is 4,000 nanograms per liter of PPT. Okay, I heard this is, there we go. And I think you've already seen this slide as well too. Looking at GAC, we've asked Chemours to install 5 to evaluate. They had bought a lot of these units and wanted to distribute them across the community to the wells that were impacted. Again, a lot of people may have varying viewpoints on this. We were concerned that they made an investment in one technology before perhaps it had been truly vetted. So we've asked them to do a study looking at 5. Mr. Waters, that was in the photos before as well, he is one of those 5 that we were studying and looking at how the systems are performing. Look at how often you have to recharge and the maintenance on them as well. So the last system was installed April 20th. And then we'll be going through a period of time evaluating those. Okay, I had good luck until now. There we go. Here's fish tissue. We had gone out in March. The catfish were still dormant, so we didn't get catfish. So you can see we have a couple of variety of species, and we're doing those analysis. It's those tissue study samples have gone to the GEL lab down in Charleston, South Carolina. The Division of Waste Management has been using that lab to support their analysis. We had gotten surface water samples at the same time and some sediment samples so that we can look at that controlled environment. What's in the water, what's in the sediment, what are we seeing in the fish? It's not enough sample size right now to be able to do that bioaccumulation, but it's going to help us pinpoint it so we can do that and try to do that larger study. And you can see we're looking at a variety of chemicals. It's not just genetics. It's a list of the fluorinated compounds. And we're using EPA's that modified, that M means modified method 537. Another foundational thing is that as the speakers before indicated, the test methods. It's very important for us in the regulatory world to use certified test methods and consistent test methods. And we were engaged in a conversation with the researchers about a week ago, and the term harmonize the test methods. So when we get test results, UNCW, NC State, Duke get test results, that we know how to have that conversation on the data. If we're doing the analysis a little bit different, how do we make sure we can talk about this and work with those results? And ideal if we were using similar test methods that we could really compare across. Additional media, there's a lot of coordination going on with the Department of Agriculture, exactly what you've heard before. We're trying to look at the crop issues. The same thing's happening in the Netherlands. We're coordinating with them and trying to take benefit of their research. The Netherlands is interested in what we're doing here in North Carolina. They're trying to look at those family farms that might be commercial, those family gardens. What is the exposure? To develop that 140 provisional health goal for drinking water, it made some assumptions. 20% of the exposure route would be through water. There's other exposure routes from inhalation and drinking. So that's what we're trying to make sure we understand what is happening and what's happening within the agriculture component as well. Let's see. I got my 5-minute warning here. I wanted to leave you guys 10 minutes for questions, so we'll get through. Air quality, here's some just the stark reality of emissions. And in air quality, again, this is, we talked earlier about self-reporting information, and when they were doing air emissions estimates versus now in that box to the right, they have some stack emissions as well as some estimates. So it's still a little bit of a combination of the two. But you can see how once they've drilled down, and again it goes back, as Dr. Cahoon said about the CAS numbers. When we're having conversations, we're having to identify what the CAS number is and what the chemical is. When that chemical from the manufacturing, if it's a byproduct, an intermediate, whatever, when it hits the water, it changes into something else. When it goes into the air pollution control stack, it changes. It's got heat, it's got water, there's chemistry going on, and so we're trying to be really careful when we're talking to commuters and ask them to make sure that we get the information that we need. But you can see how this has changed over time from the reporting levels. And to share, this is our first effort at testing rainwater and putting 5-gallon buckets out there to collect rainwater and get some information. And you can see how they've gone through different storm events. This is back in January, some of the test results. And then some of the higher concentrations up to 630 down there in the red. And then you can see, I think you already have seen this one, the 810 that's out there. So we're looking at that in the wind patterns. We're also looking at production. They don't produce the same chemicals all the time throughout the year. They have production cycles. So as with the wastewater, we're doing the same with the air and looking at production cycles. What were they manufacturing at this time period that we're seeing those kind of results? One of the things that they have installed is this carbon absorption. They were putting that on. It should be online already. I haven't seen an email, but it should be online this week. That was going to reduce some of their air emissions by 40% by putting in that control technology. The longer term control technology is a thermal oxidizer to get it down to 99% removal. But it's going to take a while to get the engineering and the design done. So this is a little bit of an enforcement on the air quality. I touched this real briefly on water. We have done injunctive relief as well as put them on notice for potential revocation of a water permit. Now air quality is doing the same based on the information we've gotten from the monitoring. Last slide on this is legislation. Again, we're trying to get resources. We want to be able to do the non-targeted analysis. What's in the House and Senate bill right now from the Republican side does not give us the type of equipment to be able to do the non-targeted analysis. We're still hopeful that we can have the latitude to evaluate. I never knew this, but just like they have car shows every year nationally, get out, roll out the new model of the car, they have the same thing for these mass specs. Okay, I just opening a whole door to a new world. But we've been told by our marketer that there's another Orbitrap mass spec that's coming out that might be in a price point available from the state agency to be able to afford and may be able to do some of the high resolution that we had asked for. Research, if I could advocate for research, test methods, environmental health studies, and risk communication. We dearly need support in those areas as well. And we are looking at developing a North Carolina list of emerging compounds of interest here in the state, using the Safe Drinking Water Act, as Dr. DeWitt had talked about, coming up with a list of things that we have already seen in the water systems through that unregulated contaminant monitoring, the UCMR, what we've already seen in North Carolina, adding it in from what's happening from the non-targeted analysis. The U.S. Geological Survey has chemicals that they've seen in waterways. Trying to put all those together. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much.
So questions?
Okay, I'll take questions. I already got one back there.
Yes, you've already acknowledged that the sample size for the fish tissue was very low, but will you also continue to only look at fish fillets and thus human health impacts, or will you look at whole body?
Yeah, I believe they also do look at whole fish because you want to get the kidneys, you want to get the internal organs as well to see what's bioaccumulating as
Okay,
well.
those are both in fillet, so.
Yeah.
Sure.
Got one for a second, this question here, then I'll come back there.
Linda, is the DEQ gonna mandate cat numbers being every, permit going forward, whether it be air, water?
I'm glad you brought that up because the topic of disclosure in general is something that we're looking at to make sure that folks are telling us about byproducts, intermediates, any kind of degradation products that they know of when something hits the water. I wholeheartedly agree with the idea of is TSCA really protecting us and making sure that that information is out there when they do register chemicals for manufacturing. So I think that's something absolutely that we need to have to look at because with the trade secret information and all, cast numbers should not be trade secret, that we should be able to have that information.
Right here.
So with the numbers for the PFMOAA and the Nafion byproduct 2 being kind of higher after Gen X was stopped, are you looking at the air stacks to check for those things coming out of there as well?
I have to go back and look at their analyte list, but the PFMOAA is the most significant concern from a concentration standpoint in the on-site groundwaters right now. So we are collaborating. So I'll have to make sure though that they're being supported to from rainwater. They're being supported by the Athens lab. So I don't think they've got that. They have that analysis yet, but that's absolutely something of interest.
I was wondering if you had Dr. Nesbitt, I know that's going to be not top of the list, but Dr. Nesbitt looking at sewage sludge. It's coming out of the part of the plants and staying in from sky and the
So we have someone from our Fayetteville Regional Office, and that's what their component of this conversation is looking at the leachate from landfills and also the land application of the wastewater treatment sludge. Yes.
Next,
With a 99.9% efficiency in thermal oxidation, which you mentioned, how quickly can we turn around the people to submit a permit for them to get a permit to go ahead and do that?
Yeah, we're already working with them. So they have brought us in, they're letting us take a look at the design already. So that it's not a, we have to hurry up and wait kind of situation. So we're already looking at the design that they're speccing out. The concerning thing I'll just add to the conversation, when you talk to them and we ask them the question of, how do you know this is gonna work? Because it's a huge investment. How do you know it's gonna work? When you get the engineer has said, we've used it before at our other plants.
Last two
We've
questions.
heard this morning that, and read it before, about the 100 parts per trillion as possible for one PFAS and 500 parts per trillion for the collective. One of the issues that we all have, I think, is that how do you actually have that as a health gold standard to be looked at when you have additive for the PFAS compounds? And particularly whenever, we know that you're looking at one compound at a time for health goals. How are we actually adding those together to determine our health limits in those?
Yeah, I was interested in hearing Dr. DeWitt, because from my knowledge, I'm not sure that at a state level, we have made the assumption that you could add all of them together or say that Gen X is similar enough to PFOA to use that as a health value. I have not heard that yet from the state DHHS. We are absolutely supportive of the idea of looking at mixtures, looking at those bioassays, the rapid process, instead of looking chemical by chemical. We don't have enough money, we don't have enough time to look chemical by chemical. We're exposed to mixtures. We have there's synergenic effects as well as additive effects of these chemicals. So we have got to look at it a broader way, and we're very much supportive of looking at it. I just don't know that we've made some of the same conclusions yet, but absolutely it's something we need to work through. And then I'm going to stay, so I tell you, if anybody has any questions or issues, please just let me know when we have a break or afterwards.
Are you testing the walls around the landfill in Sampson?
I do not know. I apologize. Michael Scott, though, in Divisional Waste Management, I'll make sure I can get you that question on that. I do want to put a pitch in. Michael's also working on the next community meeting for us at St. Paul's Middle School for Tuesday, May 29th. I don't think we've gotten any information out yet through the press release, but that's what we're trying to schedule is May 29th, it's Tuesday night, St. Paul's Middle School to be back towards the Robeson County, since they have some private well issues there as well.
Linda, thank you very much for
All right,
coming in.
thank you.
I figured, I found out that a good use of my time is to stand here and talk for a minute while we go through the technology and put the next PowerPoint up, and we have a chance to get the microphone on. I wanted to mention to you, you see we've got a panel at the end of the day. Leave it on, but I probably don't need it. We've got a panel at the end of the day, which has been scheduled for like an hour and a half. Our goal is to, not go nearly that far, and to have a lot of time at the end of that for questions. Most of the speakers are going to stick around. And I think that'll be an enjoyable part of it. We're sorry we have to cut questions short, but we got a fairly tight time frame. So with that, I'll introduce Mr. Greg Flory.
Hello. Hello. I'm Greg Flory. I'm one of your board members. It's my pleasure to introduce the next speaker, Mr. Frank